What experience do you have in the education field? When my daughter was in second grade, I began to volunteer in her classroom to help the kids that were behind in math, including one kid who had ADHD and had trouble focusing. So I would take him to a separate room and work with him independently to help him stay focused on the task at hand. I then started volunteering in the computer lab to help the young kids when they came into that for their special. I got bit by the teaching bug. I enjoyed seeing the progress. I enjoyed seeing them light up when they got it. I started volunteering, tutoring independently, and then in 2015, left my career and did a 1 year internship with NC New Schools at Early College of Forsyth to become a lateral entry secondary math teacher. That program unfortunately went bankrupt on April 30th before we would have completed our year on May the 7th of 2016, leaving me just one of 3 courses short of the requirements for licensure. When I tried to enroll at East Carolina's lateral entry program, they asked me where I was under contract. Well, I wasn't. So I was not able to enroll. There's a catch-22 there. You have to be enrolled as a teacher in order to become enrolled in the lateral entry education program. So I landed a job at Mount Tabor on about August the 4th to teach Foundations of Math 1, and Math 2. Just before the year started, about 10 days before I was supposed to start teaching, I found out that my Math 1 course had been replaced with Advanced Functions Modeling, a Math 4 course. My internship had been in Math 2 and Math 3. So my first question was, what's AFM? They told me, you'll be teaching AFM. Fortunately, there was a book, and I was able to stay at least 2 weeks ahead of the kids all year. But very early on, I learned that those kids were at least 5 years behind in math. 11 out of 24 of them failed my first test. It was all word problems. Everybody loves word problems. So I was teaching them how to translate a word problem into an algebraic equation. I had been solving word problems my entire career. Customers would tell me what they needed a computer to do. I would translate that into code and make it happen. So I understood what needed to be done to get them to a point where they could translate the program, the problem into an algebraic expression. What I realized very quickly in grading that was that half of them were 5 years behind in math. They didn't understand order of operations, didn't know their multiplication tables, didn't understand exponents, didn't understand a lot of things. And I wondered, how did they get into my 11th and 12th grade math class without this background? And I'm going to be honest, I put it on their previous teachers. They just passed them along. Just move them along, and let it be somebody else's problem. Well, it took me about 2 or 3 weeks into my first year of teaching to realize that it wasn't the teachers. That teachers were about all that was right in our district. It was the system that was the problem. So I went through that first semester. All of my kids were on semester basis. And those kids started to get it. And I backed up, went back and taught 5th grade math for a week, helped them understand all of that, and I spiraled back through the background of everything I taught from that point going forward. And at the end of that semester, the grades were your typical variation of grades. Half a dozen A's, a few B's and C's, a few D's, 1 F. That student was rarely there, and when they were there, they slept. But in my Math 2 and my Foundations of Math 1, it was the same situation. I did not know how to put in grades, how to do the minimum 50 thing, because I had not been trained in that. So my mentor teacher helped me put in grades. And they, instead of raising everybody to a 50, they raised everybody to a 60. You don't want them to fail, do you? I was like, no, I don't want them to fail, but they didn't do anything. And then we get test scores back from the state on the only standardized test that I taught that semester was my AFM. And that class exceeded expected growth by 4.8%, a blue EVOS. I didn't even know what a blue EVOS was. But it told me that what I had done by going back and meeting them where they were and bringing them up as fast as I could was the way to succeed. So when I hit second semester, I told my students, I'm going to tell you 2 things no math teacher has ever told you. I don't give grades and I don't give homework. And they're like, no homework? I said, no, we're in here 90 minutes a day. I'm going to teach 45, then you're going to work on your assignment for 45. At the end of the day, you're done. I don't know what your life is like after you leave this classroom. You might have a job, you might have football practice, you might have track practice, you might have siblings you have to take care of, you might have to cook dinner. I don't know. So we're going to take care of math in the 90 minutes a day that we're here. What you do is the credit you get. So no grades, that means this is pass fail. I said, no, I don't give grades. You earn them, I just write them down. But I'll promise you, if you don't work in my class, you will not pass. Not because I will fail you, but because you won't learn enough to pass. Well, they had for anywhere from 9 to 10, 12 years grown accustomed to not doing anything and just moving along to the next classroom. So they continued to not do anything. At the end of the 3rd quarter, I was summoned to the office for a meeting and told that 62% of the kids in 2 of my classes were failing. And I said, I'm aware of that. They haven't done the work. And that 30% of my honor students had A's. And I said, I'm aware of that. They do the work necessary to make an A. And they said, well, it would be in your best interest to resign because we're not going to renew your contract. So that's when I realized why teachers pass kids along. They have to keep their job. Now, why did the administrator tell me that he wasn't going to renew my contract because so many kids were failing? Interesting note, of those kids that had an F in my class, almost 100% of them had an F in another subject. Of the kids who had A's in my honors class, 100% of them had straight A's. I was not grading any differently than any other teacher in the school. I just had all the kids that were 5 years behind in math. So I went on to become a sub. In my first long-term sub position, I got summoned in at the end of 6 weeks and told that they had a retired math teacher that was going to take over the class. That was on a Thursday. The previous day, I had a parent come to observe my classroom. 3rd period. I was hired on a Tuesday because the long-term sub that started on Monday walked out at the beginning of 3rd period and didn't come back. The behavior was that bad. So I didn't try to send kids out of the classroom. I just wrote them up if they were continuously disrupting my classroom. preventing the other kids from learning. And the assistant principal came in and told me that the parent was there, and I was like, great. She came in, was shocked at what she saw, and I turned in all the discipline referrals that I had not turned in for the week because I had run out of forms, and the next morning was summoned to the office and told that I was being replaced. And I said, so I wrote too many D1s. And they said, well, it's not that you wrote too many, it's that the number hasn't changed in the 6 weeks you've been here. Well, the reason the number hadn't changed is because the behavior hadn't changed. I thought I was supposed to write people up if they disrupted my classroom. Apparently, I was mistaken. So that is my experience in the formal classroom. I subsequently became a tutor for the College Lift Initiative. I was one of their lead math tutors in that program until COVID hit and stopped that program. I have spent 2 years doing before and after school care. So seeing kids from kindergarten to 5th grade first thing in the morning before their day starts, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and then seeing them after their day ends from about 2:30 to 6 o'clock. Small group, 2 adults, a couple of special needs kids. So I saw what it's like to try to make all of that work. Even with just 7 to 9 to 10 kids, with 2 adults and 2 special needs kids, it's a lot. It's a lot. So while I don't have the 30 years of experience that some of our great teachers have, I think I saw pretty much everything you can see in the course of those few years in the classroom. I saw the lack of support that teachers get. I saw the lack of accountability to which students are held. Contrary to what some people say, I didn't have any problems with parents, except for one parent of an honors student who had a C in my classroom, who insisted that her daughter should have an A. She wasn't showing me A work, so she finished with a C. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. So that is my experience in the education field. Please vote Alan Daniel, District 2, Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools Board of Education. Thank you.